What if being a good person isn't enough? What if the world rewards those who understand human nature, rather than those who blindly trust it? We like to believe that honesty leads to success, kindness earns loyalty, and virtue eventually triumphs over deception. But history tells a more disturbing story. Again and again, power seems to fall into the hands of those willing to confront uncomfortable realities. 500 years ago, one man dared to describe those realities without illusion. His name was Niccolò Machiavelli, and his ideas were so controversial that centuries later, his name remains synonymous with manipulation, ambition, and ruthless pragmatism. But what if we've misunderstood him? What if Machiavelli wasn't teaching people how to become monsters, but warning us about the monsters that emerge when we refuse to see the world as it truly is? To understand Machiavelli, we must first step into Renaissance Florence. This was not a city of peace and artistic beauty alone. Behind the masterpieces and magnificent cathedrals lay a world of political intrigue, betrayals, assassinations, and fragile alliances. Governments rose and collapsed with alarming speed. Trust was dangerous. Naivety could be fatal. Machiavelli served as a diplomat and government official, negotiating with kings, generals, and powerful rulers. He observed how leaders gained authority, how they lost it, and what happened to those who misunderstood the nature of power. Then fortune turned against him. After a political shift in Florence, Machiavelli was arrested, imprisoned, and tortured under suspicion of conspiracy. Though eventually released, he was exiled from political life. It was during this exile that he wrote The Prince, a book many considered immoral, a book others saw as brutally honest. Perhaps the darkest truth Machiavelli uncovered was this: people fear loss more than they desire happiness. A person who has everything to gain may hesitate, but a person with everything to lose will fight desperately. We protect our status, our reputation, our sense of control. The fear of losing what we have often shapes our decisions more powerfully than the hope of achieving something greater. If this is true, how many of our choices are driven by aspiration, and how many by fear? Machiavelli also recognized a painful tension within leadership, the tension between morality and effectiveness. We admire leaders who are compassionate, honest, and principled. But what happens when those qualities conflict with survival? What happens when doing the right thing carries a devastating cost? Reality doesn't always reward virtue. Sometimes difficult circumstances demand difficult choices. This doesn't make those choices noble, but it does make them human. Then came Machiavelli's most infamous observation: it is safer to be feared than loved. At first glance, it sounds cruel, but Machiavelli added something important. A ruler should avoid being hated. Love depends on affection, gratitude, and changing emotions. Fear depends on consequences. Hatred, however, destroys trust and invites resistance. His point wasn't that cruelty creates strong leadership. It was that human beings are often less predictable in love than they are in fear. Another unsettling insight involved appearances. People judge with their eyes before they judge with reason. We assume confidence means competence. We mistake popularity for wisdom. We trust appearances because appearances are easier to understand than reality. Machiavelli understood that perception itself can become a form of power, and perhaps this truth has never been more relevant. Look around. In workplaces, people compete not only through skill, but through reputation. In leadership, confidence often receives more attention than quiet competence. Social dynamics reward those who understand timing, influence, and perception. Even ambition itself can become a carefully managed performance. Most people reject Machiavellian thinking in theory, yet many navigate the world according to its principles and practice. This raises an uncomfortable question. Was Machiavelli encouraging ruthlessness, or was he simply describing the world as it is, rather than how we wish it to be? Maybe The Prince was never meant to be a moral instruction manual. Maybe it was a mirror reflecting humanity's complicated relationship with power, fear, survival, and desire. Some see Machiavelli as a villain. Others see him as a realist. Perhaps he was both, or perhaps he was neither. Understanding humanity's darker tendencies does not require us to embrace them. Recognizing manipulation does not mean becoming manipulative. Awareness is not surrender. In fact, awareness may be the beginning of wisdom, because the greatest danger isn't the existence of ambition, fear, or the pursuit of power. The greatest danger is pretending these forces don't exist at all. Machiavelli forces us to confront what we'd rather avoid, not because cynicism is wisdom, but because wisdom begins with seeing clearly. And perhaps the darkest truth behind Machiavelli's philosophy is this: the world has always tested our ideals. The real question is whether we can understand human nature without becoming captive to its worst impulses.